first thing I'm going to say is that the first part of the presentation that we're going to do is on anti-aging. And, what I try and ask people is that, have you ever thought that when you're looking at aging, when you're looking at the whole thing about aging, why is it that you get to be, when you have a baby, right? He's 3 months old. He's 3.5 months old, right? And then all of a sudden, they're 5 years old. They're, and they made it to 21, right? And then all of a sudden they're 30, and oh man, made it to 50, right? But when you get to be, 70, 80, all of a sudden you start to feel like, oh, I'm supposed to feel old, right? Does anybody ever notice that? That people tend to do that. My mom and dad, my dad just turned 80 in December. And the doctors up in the United States where I'm from, they just said, well, you're 80, you need to take this prescription. And my dad says, well, but I don't have anything wrong. And they told him, they said, but you're 80 years old. You need to take that. What do you think of that? Is that good?
They should take tests.
Absolutely not. They need to look at people from a viewpoint of what's wrong with them and individualize it, but they don't tend to do it. So aging, is it inevitable? Well, we are going to get older, and we are going to live longer than our parents did, and chances are we'll live longer than our grandparents. But the thing about it is that as we look at this, and hopefully I can get this across to you, is that there's some practical solutions that we can do that we maybe can slow down the whole idea of you don't have to feel old anymore, right? Like the new 40 is 60. Right? When you get to be 60, that's the new 40. That's what we want to do. We want to get people so that they look and feel and act like they're still young when they're old. So what I did next is I brought a video that I found, and I really thought this kind of gives people an idea. So we'll watch this.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
Right? Do you want to be the guy that's playing with his grandchildren, enjoying life with his family, or the guy that's in the nursing home, right? And all of you are fairly healthy. I'm sure that we all have something wrong with us, but now's the time that you want to address it. You don't want to wait until something's wrong and then have to go after it. Next slide, Katie. So when you look at anti-aging, and we talk about anti-aging, there's animals like jellyfish. When I was out fishing with Trevor the other day, we saw jellyfish. Jellyfish are like almost immortal. They never change from when they're a baby jellyfish to when they're an old jellyfish. Biologically, they're the same. The bowhead whale, they just seem to live forever, centuries. And you can't tell the difference. You take a look at turtles. They say that Charles Darwin's pet tortoise is still alive. Right? How many years ago was Charles Darwin around? How many hundreds of years ago? Right? And his pet tortoise is still alive. Lobsters, they have more sex the older they get. Wouldn't that be cool? You get to be 90, you have more sex than you did when you were 20? That'd be kind of fun. You wouldn't remember it, but. But bacteria are an interesting creature, right? If you take a look at a bacteria that is formed today, and you compare it to the bacteria when it's 14 days old or 20 days old, biologically under a microscope, they look identical. They haven't changed. So why is it that we age? Why do we get old? Why do we age? Why do we have the aging diseases? So these are some things I'm going to try and get people to think about. Katie? And so Benjamin Franklin, pretty smart guy, and he wrote a lot of things, but he said that all diseases can be cured. And at that time, he said, except that of old age. And I want to get people to start thinking about maybe if we address aging as the disease, maybe it'll make a difference. My boy, who's 26 now, he's in medical school. He's in his third year to medical school, and I was talking to him about 10 years ago, and I've always kind of been into this anti-aging. Originally I wanted to live to be 100 years old. And at 100, I wanted to be as healthy as I possibly could. I didn't want to have anything wrong with me. And now it's changed. I want to be 110. I've added 10 years to it. I'm 55 now, so I'm at the halfway point, right? And I really feel now, with some of the things that I'm doing, I feel like I'm healthier. I feel like I'm stronger today than I was 20 years ago when I was 35, right? And when I'm 70, I want to feel stronger at 70 than I do at 55. But my son said to me, he said, Dad, he said, why do you want to grow old? He said, all that means is that you're going to have to be on all these medications. You're going to have all those old age diseases. And he was looking at things from a different point of view. And he's saying, why do you want that? And some people I talk to, I treat a lot of people. I treat some people who are 98 years old, patients of mine who are 98. I treat some 90-year-olds, some 92 years olds, and I ask them all kinds of questions, and because I want to learn from them, right? I mean, what's the best way of learning how to get old? Talk to an old person, right? And so I'm asking my 98-year-old friend. I said, what's the worst thing about being 98 years old? What do you think his answer was? All his friends were gone, right? And so he's lonely. He's there by himself. And so Katie and I were talking about it this morning, that wouldn't it be nice? Here we are in this room, all of us, and even though Trevor stole my apple pie, we'll let you stay with us. But I'm just kidding. But wouldn't it be nice if here, us group of people, that I can be back down here speaking in 20 years, and we're all going to be sitting here, there's going to be a bigger group because we all want to find out how to stay healthy and live longer. And so that's kind of like the idea that I want to project, so that when I'm 98 years old, I'm hanging around with a bunch of people that I've known for years, right? Wouldn't that be fun? So, the next slide. I'm one of those weird ducks, when I went to school, I enjoyed math, I enjoyed science, and I went to school for mechanical engineering when I first graduated from high school. And I got into my last year of engineering, and I just realized, this isn't what I want to do. I want to work with people. And so I switched into chiropractic, and I graduated from chiropractic college in 1987 when I was 26 years old. So I was a doctor when I was 26. And opened up my own practice. I didn't know what I was doing. I had never taken a business class in my life, and I opened up my own practice, and I got kind of bored with it, and I started doing what was called functional medicine, right? Where instead of looking at wait until your heart started to fail, why don't we do some things before it starts to fail? Why don't we look at things from a little bit different aspect of it? And so that's kind of how I started to attack it. And then around the time of the new millennium in 2000. I really got into anti-aging. And it wasn't really popular back then. When I said anti-aging, people would look at me and they go, Oh yeah, you're one of those guys. And they kind of gave me a weird look, like, yeah, you want to live forever, and that's what I have on my business card. On the front of my business card, it says, "Have you ever thought about living forever?" Right? Has anybody here? Have you ever thought about living forever? Right? I'm sure most of you have. You just don't dare raise your hand, but right? I mean, you thought about it, right? But you didn't raise your hand.
I thought about it from a soul perspective that we do.
Yeah. But that's what people say, is they say, well, I thought about it from the soul, there's spiritual side of it. Some people will say, oh, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I didn't ask if how you thought about it. I just asked, did you think about it? And the answer is usually yes, people have thought about it. But have you ever thought, besides the spiritual side of things, the soul side of things, if you were to live forever, Shane, what would you need?
Lots of money, of course.
Lots of money, right? Why?
Just to sort of, I know money's not everything, but it helps us in a sense to, live better, enjoy life better, travel.
Sure it does, right? So like Shane just said, if I'm going to live to be 100 years old, do I want to sit in some flat apartment somewhere in the middle of a city? No way. I want to be doing like Jim is, going to Cambodia, and I want to go to Thailand, and I want to go to the Antarctica. I want to go to Russia. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to the North Pole. There's so many places that I want to see. Guess what that takes? Money, right? You know the other thing that costs money is staying healthy, right? Here in Australia, I don't know if it's different here than it is in the States, but in the United States, we've got a healthcare system, and they'll pay for you if you're sick, right? Is that how it is here? Have you ever gone to your insurance company or gone to the doctor and say, yeah, my insurance is going to pay for it. I want to do something that keeps me healthy. Do they cover that? No, right? You guys maybe have a little better than we do there, but if we want to do that, like if you're sick up there, not only does your insurance company start to kick in, right? But a lot of the churches, if you belong to a church, they'll throw a fundraiser. Kurt got cancer. We're going to throw a fundraiser for him. We're going to raise some money. But go to your church and say, hey, I'd like you to have a fundraiser. I want to live forever. You going to raise any money? Are they going to raise any money for you?
Maybe on Kickstarter. You might get some people interested.
But not to live forever. But they're not going to do that, right? And that's the whole thing. So I try and tell people that you need money. And then the other thing that you need is you need your health, right? Because who wants to live forever if you're stuck in a wheelchair like that guy in the video, right? If you're rolling around and somebody has to feed you and somebody has to change your diapers and things like that. It's like, who wants that? Who wants that? I want to be fishing with Trevor. We're going to have a big boat, right? We're going to be catching big fish, not those little ugly ones that we caught out here in the bay, but right? And we're going to be having some fun. And so that's what I'm kind of looking at. 2 months from now, I'm going to open up a stem cell clinic. We're actually going to do stem cell injections into shoulders and knees and backs and things like that. We're going to be doing some little bit different therapy that's kind of on the edge, right? Kind of on the edge. But it's really when you start looking at it, it's really a great therapy for certain things. So the future, I'm just like, I tell people, I say, Dennis, if you're going to dream, why not dream big, right? It takes the same amount of time. You dream a little tiny dream or a great big dream, right? And so I look at my 3 boys. I've got 3 boys that are in their 20s, and that's what I've got them to do. They're always dreaming. My oldest boy, he thinks he's still going to be Batman someday, the real Batman, not the one on TV, and we look at things like that, and it's just crazy. And Katie and I were talking about it at lunch today. Think about it. When you're a kid, Margaret, what did your mom tell you? Use your imagination, right? Use your imagination.
Yes.
Yeah. But now as an adult, when you're using imagination, what are your friends telling you now?
Don't be silly.
Don't be silly. Don't daydream. Right? Why is it when you're a kid, they tell you use your imagination, but now as an adult they don't want you to use your imagination anymore. They want everybody to be the same. Fit in line. Get in line. Be a sheeple. You know, just get in line. And that's how we go through life. And so I'm trying to get people to think a little bit differently than that. And when we start looking at the whole idea about increasing somebody's life, you know, somebody says to me, they say, well, when you take a look at life now, right? We've extended life. People are living longer. But this over here, the red, the years of being diseased, is what we've extended, right? So the ideal outcome is that we're going to extend somebody's life, but we're going to shorten up the disease years, right? Wouldn't it be nice if all of a sudden you're finding that you're healthy, you're playing tennis, you're playing golf, you're fishing, you're traveling the world, and one day you wake up and you go, yeah, I'm a little tired today. I think next week's it. Wouldn't that be a cool way of going through it? And all of a sudden, you know, this ideal situation, the years of death are slower, but what we're seeing is something more like this. This is what people are imagining. This is what people are imagining right here. Oh yeah, we're going to extend their life, and they're going to be sicker longer. And so that's what I'm trying to, as I'm going around the country, up in the States, and I'm teaching people this. The reason that I'm down here is maybe get you to think about what can you do to make it so it's more like this situation. And so, anybody have a plasma TV? Right? You ever throw a brick at it? Right? Why not? You're going to bust the screen, right? And I don't care how expensive a plasma TV you got, it's not going to repair itself, is it? Not going to do it. Dennis, you ever broke your arm? Broke a bone?
Only my time.
You did? Did it heal up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at the human body, and the human body has the amazing ability that it can heal itself up. And so when we start looking at things like that, we got to start looking at things like, I like old cars. I like to work on old cars. And you take an old rusty rust bucket like this and you fix it up. But what if you would have taken care of it from the day one? What if you had a way that you knew that if you waxed that car and you changed the oil like your dad told you to, that thing would last forever? I mean, how many people here, you all have cars, right? Okay. Did you ever just drive your car to see what would happen if you didn't change the oil?
No.
Why not? John, why not?
I use royal oil.
Right?
That helps a lot more.
Because you didn't want to look stupid to your dad too, because your dad would have kicked your butt because he taught you that you changed the oil.
He did. And another thing he taught us to do was put the oil on the wooden fence in Dandenong, and that fence lived from 1955 to 1995, and I pulled it down. The palings are still good.
It's still good. There you go.
Yeah, with old oil out of the Vanguard, an old Vanguard.
So you can keep your car looking like this versus looking like this. I just fixed up a 1955 Studebaker, if anybody knows what a Studebaker is. Yeah. But I just fixed up a 1955 Studebaker. I'm going to put it on the road. It was last licensed in 1965. It sat in a barn for 20 years. My dad picked it up. It sat in another barn for 30 years. I pulled it out of the barn after sitting around for 50 years. And I've got the thing on the road, and it looks pretty darn good. Right? Wouldn't you say it looks pretty good? It's going to be a fun car to drive. I put a different motor in it, so it's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be fast to drive. You want to hit the next slide? So Angela Epstein, who's a scientist, she said that they've studied disease so much, they understand when your body's going to start falling apart. Each organ, they can understand it. And so when we start looking at it, the brain and the nervous system, right? We can see that at the age of 20, the neurons start to decline. At the age of 20. Right? No wonder at the age of 50 you got sometimers disease, right? Not Alzheimer's, just sometimers. You're forgetting some things, right? But they're finding that teeth are so important to your brain. Right? That if you're not chewing your food, if you lose your teeth, chances are it's not going to be very long and you're going to have dementia. Right? The teeth are related to your dementia. Right? And so really important that you take care of that. When you take a look at the skeletal muscles and the bones start to fall apart. By the age of 40, you're losing 0.5% to 2% of your muscle mass every single year. What would you think if all of a sudden a product came along that could help you build that muscle mass back? 60 years old, you don't have to go to the gym, but you can build muscle. Who'd want something like that? Right? Do you know other people that want something like that? You're dang right. That's why the National Institutes of Aging funded $21 million worth of research into developing a product that'll make your body build muscle. It's really cool when you start looking at it. You look at the digestive system, and I think the digestive system is so strong. I was at an anti-aging seminar down in Orlando, Florida last April, and they were talking about how the healthy bacteria in your gut are so important that the bacteria actually decide what mood you're going to have for that day, right? So if your spouse is having a bad day, you should start thinking, what's wrong with your gut, right? Would you ever ask that? Would you ever ask your spouse that?
Not before, but now I know that.
Now you know you would. You say, I need to make you something else to eat today. But it's so important. And all these chemicals that are in our food, right? And it's no different down here than it is up there. When I was flying down, I was talking to a guy from New Zealand, and I was always taught as a doctor that the best beef you could get came from New Zealand. They had the strictest cattle laws. They didn't allow any antibiotics. They didn't allow any hormones, anything like that. And I'm talking to this guy. He said, oh, yeah, that changed about 20 years ago. The beef from New Zealand is just as bad as the beef from Argentina, just as bad as the beef from the United States. It's all loaded with chemicals. It's all coming out of feedlots where they're walking around in manure pits that are 20 feet deep. Like, what's wrong with us? Why would we eat meat that's walking around and that kind of stuff, right? No wonder so many people are going vegan. They see that kind of stuff happening. And so that destroys the gut, it destroys the liver, and that's so important. We start looking at our lungs, right? At the age of 40, the cartilage and the muscles in your chest, it's gotten so hard that you can't take a deep breath in. Remember when you're 10 years old and you'd be with your buddies and you try and take that deep breath in? You remember that? And you do that with your friends? You ever do that? Yeah. Try and do it now. You'll pass out, right? Because you can't suck that air in. You start looking at the heart. Cardiovascular disease. After World War I, all these American doctors were over in Europe helping, doing stuff in the war effort back in World War I, and they learned about this German machine, this EKG machine, and they brought it back to the States. And it wasn't the FDA then, but whatever agency it was of the government that said, hey, we got to see if this stuff really works. It took them 5 years to find enough people with heart disease to actually approve the EKG machine. 5 years. How long would it take today? 5 minutes. They could test all of us here. Well, maybe not us because most of us take good products, but you could go out there in the hallway and you could probably in 5 minutes, you could find enough people to prove the EKG machine works, right? And so our heart starts to fall apart, and now 20-year-olds are having heart disease, right? The kidneys. Wow, the kidneys are so important. And it balances the pH in your body. We've all heard of people saying, oh, this alkaline water is so good for you, and you want to have the alkaline, you want to have the right acid, and you want to have this, you want to have that. Your kidneys maintain this acid-alkaline balance all the time. If it gets out of whack, right? You drink 1 can of soda. We call it soda up there. I don't know, what do you guys call it down here? Pop?
Fizzy water.
Fizzy water?
Soft drink.
Soft drinks? Yeah. So you drink a soft drink, right? And do you know how many, 1 12-ounce can, do you know how much water, pH balanced water you have to drink to balance out 1 soft drink?
10.
30. 30 glasses of water to balance out 1 soft drink. Holy cow, no wonder so much of us are sick. We have kidney disease. Kidney disease is one of the top 10 killers up in the States. Crazy. And we sell so much soda now, it's just amazing. And I don't know if you guys do the same thing here, but it is a big seller because of that. People are just addicted to it. Your skin, right? And we talk about anti-aging. Most people are like, I already use a skincare product. right? That's what they think of right away. They think of how they look. You look at the hair, right? And your hair, it starts to break down. And most of these shampoos that we have with sodium lauryl sulfate in them, so all these chemicals, what it does is it changes the cycle. The hair has a growth and hibernation cycle, right? And when you have a shampoo and hair care products that don't have the right ingredients, they're made with toxins and things like that, it changes that, right? And it makes the hair so it starts going into a different growth cycle, and it's bad. And then you start to see people that their voice starts to change, right? So it's all predictable that we're seeing that things are happening. The vision starts to fall apart. Hearing starts to go, right? Taste and smell. And we're seeing that you can predict when this is going to happen. And so a linear thinking is basically this, is that we take a look at what's going on in the United States and we say, here's what they're doing. We come over here into Australia and we just say, well, here's what they're doing in the United States, right? We go over to China and we go, here's what they're doing in the United States, here's what they're doing in Australia, it must be working, right? That's linear thinking. And so if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got, right? And all of a sudden people are sick here just like they are up in the States. And, you know, I drive around and I see you guys have McDonald's just like we do. And just, you know, you start looking at some of the stuff. But so when we start talking about what we're here for today, all of you are here listening to me talk on this, which means that you're thinking vertically, right? You're thinking with vertical change. You're saying, we're going to do something different, right? And if you do something a little bit different, some of your friends are going to look at you a little bit weird, right? And they may not agree with you, right? When I told people that I was going to get into anti-aging medicine and I start learning about this product and that product and all that, most of my friends, they just like, they don't want to have anything to do with it. You know, what's your flavor of the day today, they tell me. What are you selling? And I said, well, I'm not selling anything, but I'm going to show you some stuff, right? And now 20 years later, they're coming up and they're saying, well, how come you look younger than you did 20 years ago from 20 years ago and we're not? How come we're falling asleep at 10 o'clock at night and you just seem to go and go and go? Katie and I are emailing at each other at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because she doesn't sleep either. But you got to start thinking with vertical thinking, and you start thinking that some people you know, why do they never seem to age, right? What's going on with them? Why don't they age? Why don't they look older? And so genetics plays a part with it, and genetics is like a 10 to 20%, right? But it's the environment that you're putting that genetics in. And some people, like, anybody here remember George Burns? Right? And so I remember did you ever watch Johnny Carson, the late night show? Okay, so it was a late night TV show up in America, and Johnny Carson was interviewing George Burns the year that he turned 100. And I remember watching this episode, and Johnny Carson asked George Burns, well, what's your secret? And George Burns said, I just don't listen to my doctors. As he had a big stogie in one hand and a martini in the other hand, right? That's what George Burns did. But I don't know if he ever actually smoked a cigar. He just carried it around, maybe chewed on it a little bit. But he always had a martini in his hand. And you start looking at that, he had the right kind of genetics that he could do the wrong things and still live to be 103. Right? Most of us don't have those genetics. So we have to look at what can we do with our environment to make it so that we can live longer and healthier and change those kinds of things. Sugar is so bad for us. Sugar is one thing that it's actually a toxin. When you look at it, it affects every cell in your body, not in a good way. And I remember looking through some old magazines I picked up at an auction sale up there. This farmer, he had big boxes of these old magazines from the 1950s and 1960s, and I was paging through them, and they had advertisements in there and they showed the guy on the beach. You remember this ad? And it showed the big guy kicking sand in the face of the little guy. Remember that ad? And basically it said, eat more sugar. Right? If you go back and look, back in the early 1900s, the average person, I'm going to talk about America since that's where I'm from, the average American back in the early 1900s, we consumed 12 pounds of sugar a year. So about a pound a month, that was it. How much do you think we consume now?
Pound a day almost.
144 pounds a year. So we took and we multiplied it that much, right? 12 pounds a month. Holy cow, I mean, no wonder we're sick. No wonder we're all fat, right? Because we're all eating all this stuff. And you start looking at it. Wheat, right? Wheat turns into sugar. Celery turns into sugar. Bread turns into sugar. And our bodies just weren't designed for that. So what happens is it affects everything. It affects your hormones. It affects your mood. It affects your metabolism. It just throws everything out of whack. And again, you start looking at that stuff. It's no wonder that we're getting more sick. Right? We're living longer. But the price we pay right now is that because we're doing things wrong, we're not actually living any healthier. And so you start looking at some of the aging mechanisms that are going on, right? I talked about stem cells. We're deactivating the stem cells. We're making the stem cells so we're not repairing things. You know, you take a look at salamanders, right? Anybody know what a salamander is? Right, it's a little lizard thing. You know, it's not dry skin, but it's got the wet skin. But a lizard, you can chop off. You can actually chop its head off, and it'll grow a new head. Right? You can chop off an arm. It'll grow the arm back. You can take a starfish. You can chop off one of the 5 tentacles. It'll grow that back because of stem cells. And they're saying that humans used to have that same ability. You could chop off Dennis's arm, it would grow back. You going to volunteer later? Probably not, right? But we used to have that. Telomeres, right? We've all heard of telomeres. Telomeres are something after the 2009 Nobel Prize. We all heard about telomeres, and what telomeres are like that fuse that was lit the day that your mom and dad got together and conceived you. A fuse lit, and it's burning real slow, and then all of a sudden you get to be 20, it's burning a little faster. You get to be 30, it goes faster. You get into your 40s, it's burning faster. You get in 50s and 60s, and it's burning. And by the time you get to be 70 years old, it's burning like 5 times as fast as it did when you were in your teens, right? So we want to figure out what can we do to slow that down. AMPK, this enzyme, lipofuscin, right? Lipofuscin is the fatty buildup that your body builds from burning fat as energy. You start talking about mitochondria, right? Mitochondria is like the nuclear power plants in the cells that gives the cells energy. Endothelium, the genes, you know, when you take the genetics and you put them in the wrong environment. Maybe you take and you put somebody with bad genetics, you know, like say somebody that doesn't have George Burns genes, and you give them a cigar, right? Bad gene expression. Glycation, right? Real similar to lipofuscin, except that's from sugar, right? When you burn sugar as energy, it creates a sugar coating on the cells, right? You would never dump sugar in the oil filter in your car, right? Why not? It's got to plug it up. And that's what it does in your cells. It plugs it up. So pretty soon the cells just aren't going to operate that they're supposed to. As you get older, because of certain things, what happens is that your DNA doesn't repair like it's supposed to. Your body doesn't build protein the way that it does. The immune system kind of goes to sleep. And that's why as people get older, you start to see that they get sick more often. And when they get sick, they don't get as healthy. They don't recover as quickly. I talk about this a little bit because just being into the anti-aging field, you can actually test your DNA. When they finished the Human Genome Project back in 1999, I was at one of the first seminars on this, and I had my DNA tested. It cost me $3,000 to get my DNA tested back in 1999, and I found out it was like having an owner's manual, right? And so like when you buy a lawnmower, you buy a tractor, you buy a car, don't you get an owner's manual with it? Yeah. When you buy a TV set, you get an owner's manual with it, right? Helen, wouldn't it have been nice if somebody would give your mom and dad an owner's manual on the day you were born?
No, absolutely.
right? And they would say, here's what you need to do, take care of Helen so she can live to be 100 years old. That's what these are. That's what these tests are. This Smart DNA, this is actually an Australian company. Right? So if you want to have your DNA tested, you can order it through them. So the sirtuin genes are a gene in your body. These are the repair mechanisms. These are the genes that they discovered that what they do is they go around and they repair things, right? But what happens is as you age, they actually start to slow down. And so back in the late 90s, they discovered that red wine has an ingredient called resveratrol. Has everybody heard of resveratrol? Right? It's in red wine. But do you know how much red wine it would take? How many glasses of red wine it would take for you to actually do repair? More than you want to drink today, right? How much would you guess that it would be? 100 glasses a day. 100 glasses a day. I mean, nobody's going to do that. If they are, they're probably not going to remember to do it again tomorrow. But Fortune magazine said that red wine, what did we read this morning? How much did they say was going to go up in price?
26 billion?
$26 billion industry they predicted because of the resveratrol. And then, of course, then there was all these other companies, the drug companies, they came out and they said, oh, no, that's wrong. The difference was is that when they did the original studies on resveratrol, they were using freshly squeezed grapes. They were squeezing it out right away, stepping on it or whatever they do, right? Isn't that how they make wine? They step on it. But when the drug companies did their studies, guess what they did? They used resveratrol that had been sitting around for a week or 2 weeks. It had been sitting on the shelf. And they said, that doesn't work. There's a difference there, right? It's just like if you study a synthetic versus a natural. It's not the same thing. It might look similar in a lab, but it's not the same thing. And so the sirtuin genes are triggered by the resveratrol from the red wine, but they need something called NAD plus, right? And what this is this is the fuel that helps to make that function. So all of a sudden, we're starting to put the pieces together. The puzzle's starting to fit together. So you can't take NAD. When I first heard about NAD, I thought, I'm going to take a bunch of that. And then I found out it can't be taken orally, right? You can't take it orally. You have to take precursors, right? The building blocks, and you let your body make the NAD. So we make it with something called NMN, right? We make it with something called nicotinamide riboside. There's a couple other ingredients that we can use as building block that are all natural, right? And all of a sudden we can increase those levels of the NAD plus in our body. So what happens is when you start looking at this nicotinamide mononucleotide, the MNN, $1,000 to $2,000 per gram. $1,000 to $2,000 per gram. Do you know how much a gram is?
1,000 milligrams.
Right? It's a little tiny bit. It's not much, right? It's safe to take orally. Nicotinamide riboside. It's a form of vitamin B3 that they discovered. So they found that not only did mice live longer, because that's what we want is longer living mice, but they found that not only they were living longer, they found that they were thriving. So they could take a mouse that was an equivalent of a 75-year-old mouse, and you could make it act like a 21-year-old mouse. Imagine you're 75, and they're going to make you act like a 21-year-old. Fun? Right? So effectively, you can say we can reverse the signs of aging. You're going to find that your body weights can be better under control. Your energy metabolism, insulin, the lipid, the fats, right? The bad gene expressions, the mitochondria, right? The mitochondria, the energy production. And we're going to, instead of shutting down energy production, we're going to bump it up. You're going to have more energy than you did when you were 30, right? Your vision's going to get better. You're going to find that your bone density and your immune system is going to work better. Isn't that all good stuff? Dang right. NASA even got involved with this. Did you know that NASA owns patents on stem cells? NASA owns patents on stem cells. Crazy. I never knew that. And all of a sudden I found out, oh yeah, they own some patents on stem cells. What in the world does NASA, the space agency, want to do with stem cells? Well, what they're finding out is that when the Apollo mission astronauts back in the 60s, you remember, the Apollo missions, Apollo 12, Apollo 11, things like that. When those astronauts came back from the moon, they found that they suffered from space sickness. And part of it is because as they're getting closer to the sun, as they got out of the ozone, right? You guys in Australia hear a lot about the ozone because I guess you have a problem with it down here. Right? And so they found that this nicotinamide riboside actually protects you a lot similar to the ozone. Right? So if you know that, right? Wouldn't you say that everybody in Australia should know this? You're dang right. Every single person should know it. It protects the cell from the dangerous radiation. Well, what they're doing, what NASA's doing, is they're saying we're going to Mars. Right? And if you send somebody to Mars, right now they say when they come back from Mars, every single astronaut's going to be dead. Cancer. Because they got exposed to too much radiation. They found through the studies from Harvard that they can actually give them this nicotinamide riboside that we're talking about, and they can actually reverse that. And they're finding now that they can have these astronauts come back and they're not going to have cancer. Isn't that cool? I'm not going to Mars, at least I don't think so, but I don't want to get cancer. I've seen my mom get it, I saw my dad get it, my older brother, he got it. I don't want any of that. I'm going to use this product not because I'm going to Mars, but because I just don't want to get sick. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. You've heard me talk about cancer. Everybody if you could eliminate the gene that causes cancer, I want you to stand up. If you think that would be a good thing, right? If you could eliminate the gene that causes cancer, don't be shy. I want you to stand up if you think that would be a good thing. Right? For those of you that stood up, you just eliminated the human race. Right? Because the same gene that causes cancer causes life. Right? The same gene that causes cancer causes life. The thing about it is that what we're doing is we're triggering that gene to work in a different way than it's supposed to work. So you don't want to get rid of the gene, you just want to shut it off at the right time, right? When your little boy is growing up, you want that gene working, right? Because he's growing. But when you're 60, you don't want that gene going on. I don't want to grow a nose out of my ear, right? And that's what tumors are. It's just turning it on at the wrong time. And so you don't want to eliminate that gene. Second question I'm going to ask is that if we could stop cancer today, if you could eliminate cancer, all cancer, how much do you think it would change the human lifespan? What do you think? How many years do you say that the human lifespan, average human lifespan would go up? Yeah.
Did not ask me, I might know the answer. Friday.
You know the answer.
Yeah.
How many years would you say?
Wouldn't have a clue.
Huh?
Wouldn't have a clue. I don't think it would.
If we could do it, do you think that it would raise the lifespan by 5 years? 10 years? 20?
Potential indefinite.
If you eliminated cancer out of the vocabulary, you would only change the average lifespan of a human by 2.5 years. For 2.5 years, that's it. Right? But look at this. Think about the Australian government. Think about the United States government, the National Institutes of Aging, the National Institutes of Health, the President's Council on Cancer. How many gazillion dollars have they spent? When President Nixon was president in 1972, when I was 10 years old, he started the President's Council on Cancer. He said within 5 years we're not going to have cancer anymore. Millions of dollars have been spent on it to change life by 2.5 years. Right? Isn't that crazy?
Why is it only
What's that?
Why is it only 2.5 years? I don't get that.
Well, because it's not going to extend anybody's life that much, because the change in the actual lifespan just doesn't change that much by getting rid of the cancer. Because the average person who gets cancer, if you take a look at what they do for treatment, they live 5 years. So that's why it would only change it 2.5 years. But you got all that money being spent on it. You got all the money spent on heart disease, right? Why don't we take and start putting our money into treating aging? Because that covers cancer, that covers vision, it covers kidney disease, it covers heart disease, it covers them all. But you know why they don't do it? Right? There's more money in treating sick people. Right? And so we got to start thinking, like I'm saying, this vertical thinking. Start thinking, what can we do to start getting it so that we're treating the right thing? Intermittent fasting. Has anybody ever heard of that? Right? That's where maybe you eat tonight at 6 o'clock, but you wait 18 hours before you have your next meal. Right? And if you do that 2 to 3 times per week, this is something that's some information I can give you that you can go home, it doesn't cost you anything, and you can change your life. They found that if you skip a meal and 2 or 3 times a week, you do this intermittent fasting, you can change your life, you can actually extend your life. Right? Who couldn't do that? Eat at 6 o'clock tonight, don't eat again until 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Who couldn't do that? Everybody could do that. You couldn't do that. Right? One guy, he can't do it. Exercise. You don't have to do a marathon. All you have to do is just move. Right? That's exercise. And they're saying that not only do you find that you lose the function to be able to exercise as you get older, this is important, you lose the ability to respond to exercise. Right? You lose the ability. So you take somebody who's older and you put them into a gym, they start working out, lifting weights, and it doesn't do any good. And nothing happens. Right? Because they can't respond to it anymore. So you have to change that. So we're going to make the body so it knows how to respond. And these are the things that we're finding as we look in this anti-aging field, is that how can we change that? We'll show you that. You take a look at somebody who gets a pacemaker, $100,000 or more, right? But if you give somebody, and it extends their life, they say that it extends their life for just a very short time in most people. But you take somebody, you show them how to do some anti-aging stuff. I mean, even if you're doing the most aggressive anti-aging, you're talking less than $10,000 per year. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Right? They're saying for every dollar that you spend on anti-aging, you spend $5 not going to the doctor. 1 for 5 ratio. Isn't that a good investment? If you could go to the bank with that, that's a pretty good investment, isn't it? It sure is. Some people say, oh, overpopulation. If people live longer, we're gonna have too many people, right? But guess what happens? We see it here in Australia. As you guys have lived longer, what are you seeing as far as the number of kids that people have? The average family, like when we were talking to Katie's mom, how many kids did your great grandma have?
She had 12 and two or three died.
She had 12, right?
6th grade.
How many did your mom have?
2.
2, right? Nobody has 13 kids anymore. You know anybody that has 13 kids in their family? 1? Yeah, but most families don't do that, right? Because as you live longer, you have less kids. But the other thing is that if you know you're going to live to be 100 years old, are you going to start having kids when you're 20?
Probably not.
Probably not. You're going to wait till you're 30, right? Maybe 40, right? Because you know that you can do that. The other thing they talk about is the cost of the elderly. Well, if nobody's getting sick, doesn't the cost of the elderly go down? Right? And like Shane was saying, we're going to keep people working. They're going to make more money, so they're paying for their own health care. Guess what happens with the health care from the government? Your government that pays for a lot of the health care in the country, guess what happens to them? They get to keep more of their money. Right? They're going to be happier. So all of a sudden you start looking at aging in a little bit different view. Little bit different. And dollars and cents and all that, it all starts to make sense. It all starts to work together. It starts to fit. Look at these magazines, right? They're all talking about look younger, best skin ever, stop aging, drop a decade, right? Anti-aging, stars top anti-aging, right? Crazy. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it, right? So don't you want to look younger too? You don't want to just feel younger. You don't want to just be younger, but you want to look younger. And so you start looking at some of the things again in a little bit different way, right? I mean, I'm a guy, I like to be outside, I like to hunt, I like to fish, I like to be outside doing stuff. I'm getting sunburnt all the time. I got fair colored skin, so I used to burn all the time. I'd go from red to peel and then I'd be white. Then I'd go red and I'd peel and I'd be white. And that's my skin tone. It's either red or white. and I just thought I'm gonna have horrible skin. And I'm sitting out at my friend's house out in Utah, and he gave me this product and I started using it just because he gave it to me, and I thought, well, I'll try it. And I took a picture that day, and 3 days later I took another picture and I compared them. I went, holy cow. You've seen that picture of me, right? It changed in 3 days. And I looked a little different because now all of a sudden I'm a guy looking at skincare going, right? I can be 100 and look like I'm 60. Wouldn't that be cool? When you're 100, wouldn't you want to look like you're 60? Right? Grow your hair back? So skincare is one of the things that a lot of people think of when I talk about anti-aging. You never hear anybody who's healthy and happy saying, oh, I just want to die tomorrow. Right? I want to shut it off tomorrow. If you're 99 years old and you're healthy, you want to be 100. If you're 100 and you're healthy, you want to be 101. Right? And then after 100, then it's like you're a little baby again. And now I'm 103 months. Right? I'm 100 and a half. Right? Just like you did when you're a kid. Oh, he's 3.5. Right? You never tell people, oh, Dennis, I'm 55 and a half. Right? But all of a sudden when you get to be 90, yeah, I'm 91 and a half. And so I kind of look at things a little bit differently, and I hopefully that all of you do too. What can you do? And you start thinking about it, right? And a month ago, everybody had New Year's resolutions, right? Anybody do that? They're going to improve their life. You're going to do something, you don't do it, right? Because everything's perfect. But
You're gonna break the one.
everybody, they think about it, you go into the new year, it's a new change, and I'm going to do this. And so many times what happens to people is that they set their goals so high, or maybe they do it wrong, they say the wrong thing, they tell their goal wrong to where they can't do it. And then they fail, and then they find themselves saying the next year, I tried that. It didn't work for me. I don't do those New Year's resolution things, right? So I've started to teach people that, why don't you think about it this way? Like I have a New Year's resolution. Last year I lost 40 pounds. That was my New Year's resolution, is I wanted to lose 40 pounds. And I did it, and I've kept it off. Now my goal this year is I want to lose another 40 pounds, right? But I don't say I'm going to lose 40 pounds and I smash it into my head, every day. I don't do that. What I do is I wake up in the morning, I go, what can I do today that's going to help me reach my goal of losing 40 pounds? What can I do? And if you ask yourself that question, if you ask yourself, what can I do to improve my health this year? What can I do to make my life a little bit better? And every day you start thinking about it, because what happens is that if you present a question to your brain's going to always be trying to answer it. Right? You found that? That's exactly how it works. So all of a sudden you start thinking about it. So some of the things that we talked about today. What if you can take and you can figure out, I want to live to be 100. You know, they surveyed a lot of people. I don't remember exactly how many hundreds of people that had made it to 100 years old or in their 90s, and they asked them, so what did you do? What was the most important thing, right? And some people might say, well, they didn't smoke, right? Did you know that 25% of people who make it to 100 years old smoke? Right? So smoking isn't it, right? They look at it and say, well, they're skinny. They got their weight under control. Do you know that 25% of people who make it to 100 are overweight? So it's not weight control, right? They looked at all these different factors and they said, what's the number one factor, right? Margaret, what do you think the number one factor is for people that make it to 100?
Wanting to.
Wanting to.
Doing what it takes.
It's right there. It's right there. And so if you decide that you're going to make it to 100, I'm going to do it, and you start visualizing that what you're going to do, and you start presenting it to your brain, you start asking yourself, what can I do to make it so that I can make it to 100? And you start asking yourself that question. Chances are you're going to have a better chance of making it there. And then don't look at things like compartmentalizing things where you're taking and looking at, well, I'm just going to work on the heart today, right? I'm just going to work on my brain today, right? What you do is you start looking at, what can I do for the whole body? And you start looking at that whole aging mechanism, right? And you start talking to your kids about it, and your brothers and your sisters, and you just tell them, hey, when I'm 100, I'd sure like to have all of you around, right? Because you think the same. If you got that one friend that you don't really like anyhow, don't tell him any of the secrets, right? Don't give him any secret. But everybody else, you want to give them the secrets on it, and you teach them, what can you do? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break now, grab a glass of water, talk, mingle a little bit. What I tell people is find out what each other's story is, on different things, but mingle a little bit. 15 minutes we're going to get up, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about products that are natural that can do the stuff that we're talking about. Because there's drugs too that they're working on right now, but we're going to talk about some natural things that can kind of maybe fit into that link like that. So take a little bit of break and we'll be back.